Today, Ron and I are going to be talking about the end of Acquia Lightning, um, which is both a sad and exciting time, I think, as we will talk about in the next 45 minutes or so. If you don't know us, hi, I'm Mike Madison. I'm a senior manager on Acquia's professional services team. I'm based in Seattle, and I'm also the technical lead for Drupal Govcon. So I'm very excited to be here today.
And my name is Ron Northcutt. I'm the Director of Developer Advocacy. Um, I'm actually based in the Austin area, although I'm in Boston today for some other fun things. And Mike is been kind enough to invite me to join this session today so we could talk about some of this good stuff. So very nice.
And Ron and I are both pretty conversational people. I would definitely prefer as we go today. If you have questions, if what we're saying isn't making sense, please throw something in the chat or the QA. We'll certainly have time at the end of the talk for a formal Q&A, but I don't want you to leave something until the end and forget about it. So hit us up as we go, and we'll do our best to address it while it's relevant.
Absolutely. Okay. Shall we
So yeah, I think we're ready to go.
dive in?
So today, here are kind of the different things that we're going to be talking about in relation to Lightning End of Life. And we'll try to get down a little bit into some technical detail, not too technical, but a little bit just to try and make sure if you, like Josh, are getting ready to do some Lightning transition, you'll hopefully leave here today, perhaps not older, but wiser.
And Mike, all I'm seeing is the title slide. Have we?
Oh, is it not advancing for you?
It is not.
Okay, because yeah, I'm all the way down on mission accomplished at this point.
Is it just me? Is anyone in the chat also just seeing the title slide?
Or are you on section one, mission accomplished?
Oh, I might need to refresh. Okay. Let me see
All
if I can.
right. And he's gone. Time out. He'll be back. I've had this happen with Hop in a time or two before where all of a sudden just something isn't updating for whatever reason. So hopefully the refresh fixed it.
We're good. Thanks,
Mission
everybody.
accomplished. We're done. See everybody. Good talk.
That's all we
All right.
needed.
We just needed a big banner and we could call it a day.
Yeah, that's the downside of putting that particular slide up.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
So, um, remind me, this is me, yes?
Yes.
Thank you. I didn't want to step on your toes.
No, go for it.
So when we created, when Acquia created Lightning a few years ago, it was right after Drupal 8 came out. And there were a couple of big reasons. One was to focus on the developers to make it easier for them to build out great Drupal sites. Was to really focus on content creators and those editorial teams to give them the tools they needed. And so when Drupal 8 first came out, hot off the press, there were some key areas where we knew that we were going to have to make sure that we were kind of filling in the gaps. And it's not that these weren't things that you could do. All of this was possible, but typically it was knowing which particular modules you were going to use, maybe a little bit of config, some tweaking. There might be some adjustments or even some little custom code here or there. So to make that easier for people, Lightning was created, and the original mandate was kind of look at these four specific areas: media, which is big and has grown very, very quickly; layouts, specifically with Layout Builder and some other tools with blocks; workflow; and then supporting an API first kind of approach.
And for those of you that have been using Drupal 8 for 6 years, roughly, since Drupal 8 came
Mhm.
out, hopefully you remember that these four things were not nearly as robust at the beginning of the Drupal 8 ecosystem as they are today. And you
Exactly.
might get a little preview of where we're going with this by me saying that. The only way you got some of these things early in the Drupal 8 ecosystem was via contrib,
Mm,
and Lightning very much helped jumpstart that contrib process.
absolutely. So, when Lightning was created, one of the big hopes that the team had was that the work that was being done would actually help influence the community. And in fact, a lot of this has ended up going into core. So some of the main people that have worked on Lightning, Adam Honig springs to mind, has done a lot of work with, for example, with media, a media library, and getting those things into core layouts, improving workflow. So now it almost seems kind of silly that those were even issues, because now in later versions of Drupal 8 and now in Drupal 9, these things are, we kind of sometimes take them for granted. So that's where the mission accomplished concept comes from. The goal was to create these things, get them out into the community, iterate quickly in contrib space using Lightning, and then use that to help accelerate core development. So it worked out really, really well. There were some things that we learned through this process. One of the things we learned was that doing profiles and especially sub profiles is challenging, both from managing the distribution of the profile all the way down to dealing with updates and things like that. There's a patch that is there that you could still use sub profiles, but it looks like that has never really gained traction in the community, and currently there's no real clear plan for that to become like a standardized kind of thing. And so what ended up happening is part of the way through Lightning's life, in the team switched to recommending building out sites using the Lightning submodules. So Lightning Media, Lightning Layouts, Lightning Workflow, Lightning API, etc. Much easier to kind of use Composer, grab the pieces you need, and just kind of build stuff. So that was one thing we learned. I also learned that it's easier to kind of maintain those and make it possible for people to pull in with different things if we think about them as those pieces, even though those pieces are designed to kind of work together. And we also learned that you know the developers specifically that are putting these things together, they really do want more flexibility and composability. They want to be able to choose the pieces that they want. So having a prepackaged thing coming out might be kind of nice, but then that could also potentially force people to take in specific modules that they might want to replace or change out, and then there's the issue of, well, I'm going to have that in my code base even if I'm not using it. So trying to maximize for flexibility was one of the big things. Drupal is life. I love it, Josh.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Yeah, that's great.
So I think Ron already talked a bit about this, but just to really reiterate, um, a lot of what Lightning was there to do was provide additional features and functionality to Drupal 8. Uh, as we sort of jokingly say, mission accomplished. Lightning did that. Many of those features that Lightning originally was providing have actually gone out of Lightning. If you look at what Lightning does today versus what Lightning did 6 years ago, it's significantly, drastically less. And that's not because Acquia have gutted Lightning. It's because Drupal has picked up, as Ron said, a significant amount of that, especially in the media and workflow space. So since Drupal 8 is going end of life, and since most of Lightning is already in Drupal, what Acquia really looked at was, is there a need to have a Lightning profile anymore? And the answer is no, not really.
Mhm.
Now, the good news is that the Lightning modules themselves are not going away. They're going to be maintained through the end of Drupal 9, which is 2 more years, Lightning 2023. And I did see in the Q&A, CC Lee was saying that we've changed Lightning to standard and migrated from Drupal 8 to 9, but now they're getting a scheduled update entity type does not exist warning. That could very well be because you don't have Lightning scheduler in your code base. So I would have a look at that. The Lightning workflow module is going to continue to be maintained for another couple years, so you don't have to get rid of that. We'll talk about technical detail here in a minute, but the big takeaway from this slide is that Lightning API, Lightning Media, Lightning Workflow, Lightning Core, I think there's another one I'm forgetting now. The actual Lightning modules provide all of the functionality at this point. The Lightning profile just kind of stitches it all together. And the profile is the only thing that is actually going end of life. So it's time to get off the profile. It's fine to continue using the modules for the foreseeable future. So
Exactly.
let's start getting into some of the technical nitty gritty. So for those of you on the call or watching the recording that are still running Lightning today, let's talk about how we get from using Lightning as your profile to not using Lightning as your profile. And I would say at a high level, and Ron, maybe you can think of more, but these are the three primary scenarios I want to call out. And I've actually done a Lightning removal in each of these different scenarios. Scenario one, the easiest, most straightforward, is Lightning is your site's profile, right? So you are running Lightning, Lightning's the thing. Scenario two is that you've created a custom profile and Lightning is the base profile. So you have essentially sub-profiled Lightning, which is one of the use cases Ron talked about a moment ago. And then the third and the most challenging scenario is that you are using a profile that has Lightning as a base. So you are using a sub-profile of Lightning, but it isn't yours. And I actually helped an Acquia customer not too long ago with this exact situation. There are some contrib profiles out in the community that have Lightning as the base. Thankfully, the process that we're going to talk about here is very similar for all three of these scenarios. But the farther you abstract away from Lightning is your profile, the slightly more difficult it's going to get. As question from Josh: are Drupal profiles end of life? Should we as a community walk away from this concept? I've heard no discussion of that. I think there's still an awful lot of benefit from using install profiles, especially in a multi-site context. You can get a lot of benefit from having different distributions in profiles. But Lightning itself is donezo. So one thing I am eternally grateful to the Lightning team for is they have actually pulled together a really powerful uninstall tool. It basically does everything for you, with a few moderate caveats, which we'll talk about. But essentially, Lightning does its own uninstall, which is good. So we have extensive documentation, which we link to later in the slides. You can find this out on the Lightning GitHub page to uninstall. You run a command, you deploy. That's basically it. Now, as with everything, it's a little more involved than that, but that's the high level. Going a layer deeper, you basically need to make sure that you have Lightning and everything up to date. We'll talk about what that means in a sec. You need to switch from Lightning to something, right? Your site does have to have an install profile. It doesn't have to be Lightning. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. I tend to recommend that you switch to minimal. We'll talk more about that in a minute. Regardless of your configuration management strategy, whether you're doing like a complete drush config import on deploy, you're doing a hook update in on deploy, minor config, no config at all, you're just kind of flying fast and loose and just using the active config in the database, your configuration in your sites has to have Lightning as a profile removed from it. However, whatever, whenever you sort of deal with that. Right. So then you can ultimately remove Lightning from the code base. But at the end of the day, you have to do those high level steps. Let's go a little bit lower into some of these. So when you update Lightning, when we say that, if you're currently running Lightning 3 as an example, you do not have to update all the way to Lightning 5 to uninstall. That would be really painful. The config changes and everything involved in that would suck. But you do need to make sure that you are at the end of whatever version of Lightning you're currently running. So if you're running Lightning 3, you need to be running the most current version of Lightning 3 to do the uninstall. Really important, because the uninstall process did not exist in earlier versions of Lightning, right? So if you're running Lightning 5.x for 5.0, the uninstaller is not going to be there. So again, you're going to have to update. The next thing is you're going to go through the uninstallation of the profile. Now, if you know anything about Drupal, you know that Drupal does not let you change profiles. That is something you cannot do. It's not a module. It's not a theme. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Once it's there, it's there. It's there. So This is a little hacky, but it is temporary, so I'm going to ask you to bear with me. Lightning will automatically, first and foremost, migrate all of its dependencies into your base project. So just to show you what that looks like real quick out on the Govcon codebase, um, I have a bunch of stuff in the Govcon codebase's composer.json file now that I did not used to have. So here you can see that I have all of my Lightning submodules that I'm still using. I'm not using Lightning API, but I am using core, layout, media, and workflow. All of these used to be managed by the Lightning profile. The uninstallation process moved those for me into my composer.json, so I didn't lose them. Any other dependencies that Lightning has, like Blazy, inline entity form, I'm not going to be able to pick them all out of here, but there's a fair number of things that the Lightning profile requires in its own composer.json that the uninstall will move into your project's composer.json, so you don't lose them. That's super cool.
And just to be clear, Mike, that's we're looking at the details here, but that's stuff that the uninstall does for us.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. So you're seeing, when I show you that on the Govcon site, you're seeing the result of the uninstall process. I did not have to like manually copy and paste. Running that uninstall command did that for me automatically. The next thing it'll do is it will actually patch Drupal core to temporarily allow you to change the profile. And again, if you try to change profile during a config import, Drupal core is going to give you a pretty big middle finger as part of that config process. So we don't want that. This patch allows you to do that temporarily. The patch will come back out later. There's a contrib module called Profile Switcher. So Lightning will make sure that Profile Switcher is present in your codebase, and then ultimately Lightning Core or Lightning will use Profile Switcher to change the active profile in your configuration. Now this is where it gets interesting, because remember, almost all of the Lightning functionality today is not in Lightning. It's in the modules. So hot swapping profiles, like, you're not going to get a very significant config differential when you do this, right? Like looking at my pull request, I did a couple of other things on the Govcon site, and we'll link to the pull request later in this these slides. But the most significant config change is this right here, where we're switching the profile from Lightning to minimal. Right? So I would not expect a very significant change in your configuration at all when you go through and do this. Like, it is a very important change, but it is not a very large change to pull this out. Finally, with config changes, remember, these configuration changes have to be made in all of your environments before you remove Lightning.
Right.
Okay. So even though it's a small change, it's a really important one. If you've ever tried to uninstall a module and you've removed it from Composer before you fully uninstalled it, like you're already going to know kind of what I'm talking about and where we're going with this. So you do have to do these config changes sort of while Lightning is present. Then you can remove Lightning from the codebase entirely. It's a multi-step process. Did I miss anything in there, Ron, that you wanted to talk about before we move on to some tips and tricks?
Nothing specific. There was a question about the patch that lets you swap out the profile. Could that be used for other things? My assumption is yes.
It can, yes.
You just have to do that yourself. They're not going to have the command's not going to do it for you.
Correct. But so that's interesting, because so remember this, the three different scenarios I was talking about, where your main profile is not Lightning, right? Scenarios 2 and 3, you have some other profile as your profile. So if you have Lightning in your code base, and if you are swapping profiles, you can technically use the Lightning uninstaller to change the profile from whatever to whatever. Right? So Bernardo, if you have some other profile entirely and Lightning's not in the picture, I can talk, I promise. Yes, you could use the profile switcher module and the methodology that Lightning's using to do that switch, but the drush pm uninstall Lightning command that Lightning has wouldn't be present. So you'd have to kind of retrofit, re-engineer some of that. If you have Lightning in the profile that we're trying to uninstall is a sub profile of Lightning, Lightning will uninstall itself and Lightning will uninstall sub profiles as part of the uninstall process. And again, I've done this quite successfully in a couple of other projects.
Very cool. Thanks. Appreciate it, Mike.
Yeah, that's a good question. All right, so let's talk about some tips and tricks. First and foremost, I cannot stress enough that this is not a good time to totally re-architect your website. So we've gotten some questions about, oh, well, if Lightning's going away, can we switch to Acquia CMS as part of that? Or if Lightning's going away, can I completely refactor or whatever? The short answer is, I mean, you can do whatever you want, but I would not recommend doing it as part of the uninstallation process. Treat the uninstall process as like a single process, get it completely done, and then do whatever other refactoring. Like treat this like a security update, right? A security update should be the smallest, itty bittiest possible change to get that critical security update out. I would not recommend doing other refactoring as part of this.
Agreed. Yeah.
The next thing is, and this has thrown some people for a bit of a loop, be prepared for multiple full production deployments throughout this process. Best case scenario, I think you're looking at 2 production deployments. Worst case, you could actually be looking at 3, depending on how significant of an update you have to do to get Lightning up to date. But at bare minimum, you have to do the change to active configuration through production to remove Lightning. And again, if profile switcher and all that other stuff isn't there already, you may need to deploy that first. But bare minimum, you do 1 full deploy pass to production to change the profile with Lightning still present. And then you do another full deployment after that to remove Lightning from the code base. So,
which is why you have in the steps, you had that whole point of do the uninstall and take that all the way to prod, make sure it's stable and you're good, and then go through the last bit to actually pull the Lightning dependency out.
Yeah.
Makes total sense.
Next, spend time to do the updates and get everything done. So the Lightning end of life is not nearly as crucial as the Drupal 8 end of life, and you can actually upgrade to Drupal 9 using Lightning right now. It's not supported per se since it's end of life, but it's not going to block you from getting to Drupal 9. So I would not rush through this update. I would not knock over people between you and the exit trying to run. Make sure when you do this, you have some time to thoroughly test and make sure everything works, and make sure, as we said a moment ago, that those updates are fully deployed into your production environment. If you're already doing robust configuration management, whatever that means to you, if you're already doing pretty solid testing, if you already have a solid deployment and update strategy, this should be cake. If you don't get on very well with Composer, if you have trouble managing configuration, if deployments are kind of sketchy, you may struggle with this. So I would definitely set this aside. And as I said a moment ago, I would do it in the smallest possible update so that you're not also pushing a bunch of other stuff simultaneously. And I'm really glad, Ron, that you added this slide, because people tend to miss this step. You should be testing the heck out of this locally before you do the update. You should be testing the heck out of it once you've deployed it, just to make sure that everything goes smoothly. The good news is doing what we're talking about doing is kind of an all-in or all-out sort of scenario in most cases. Now, if you do change a bunch of other configuration as part of the process, that statement goes out the window. But doing what we're talking about here, it's either going to work or it's not. I don't think you're
Right.
going to hit a whole lot of intervening stuff in the middle. And I do see some discussion in the QA about this scheduled updates module. Um, that is an issue with the scheduled updates module, and we can talk about that at the end, Cecily, about like some of the issues you're having there. But like in terms of actually swapping out the profile, it's going to work or it's not. So I don't think you're going to hit a whole lot of middle ground where it's sort of working and sort of not. And again, I think we've already said this and maybe beaten this into the ground a bit, but just doubly, triply be sure that you are not trying to remove Lightning from Composer until you've deployed to prod. And it can be really easy to think, oh, I've already done a pull request. I've already done this. It works. I've merged my pull request to change the config. Now I'm going to go ahead and open another pull request to pull Lightning out of Composer. You cannot merge that second pull request until you've deployed all the way into production. The active configuration in every environment, local, dev stage, prod, whatever else you got, cannot reference the Lightning profile at all before you remove it from Composer and remove it from the code base. Because unfortunately, the way the Drupal uninstall process works, you can't uninstall something that doesn't exist, and your site will begin throwing, at best, PHP warnings about a missing profile and module, and at worst, your entire site will start white screening and throwing fatal errors because of a missing dependency.
Exactly.
So, yeah, do not take Lightning out until you've pushed that config or that active database change all the way out. And we haven't talked a lot about multisite here. But I'm not doing you any favors because I know a lot of our government organizations and universities out there do use multisite. So remember, if you have a multisite setup and you're using Lightning for some or all of the multisites, you cannot um, uh, remove Lightning until you've remediated the uninstall across the entire multi-site array. That doesn't mean you have to do all of them at the same time, right? If I mean, I guess technically, if depending on your configuration management strategy, which sites you're using, which profiles, whatever, you might be able to do it in stages. But what we're saying about deploying through prod applies for all sites in a multi-site before you remove Lightning. So.
Exactly.
Last thing in terms of tips and tricks, what profile should we be using moving forward? This is a question I've heard several times, right? Like, we've been using Lightning for years. What should we use now? Well, most of my projects are either using Acquia CMS, which is a new distribution that Acquia has created. And Ron, I'll let you talk about that in just a sec. Or I'm using Minimal. Standard does not play real nice with a config split configuration management strategy. And if you know me, that is my configuration management strategy of choice. So I tend to roll with either Acquia CMS or Minimal. There are a lot of other options out there, but I think our recommendation moving forward would be either Acquia CMS or Minimal.
Yeah, I would have to agree. Minimal is probably going to be the safest option, just because it's the least opinionated, right, that you can find. As far as Acquia CMS, the good news is that Acquia CMS, and I did a session about this at DrupalCon Europe. So when that recording comes out in a little while, you can see it. But the good news is that Acquia CMS, and following the tradition that we've established with Lightning, actually does have submodules. So if you want to take some of the stuff that's in Acquia CMS, you should be able to go and take a look at those submodules and add the ones you want to an existing code base. But definitely be something to look at, and we will continue to be iterating and providing more functionality with Acquia CMS, like we did with Lightning.
All right. So resources. Let's see. Ron, I think you were going to cover these.
Yes. So these were some of the big ones that I thought were important. There's a Lightning end of life blog post on Acquia.com, but I specifically put Mike's here because it is basically just kind of a one-page overview of this entire session. To be honest with you, most everything that that we talked about here is at least touched on or linked from that blog post. So that's a great source to go to. There's also, if you really want to get into all of the nitty gritty, the Acquia Lightning Wiki has a page that not only tells you how to do this, you run the uninstall and all those other fun things, but it actually breaks down into pretty good detail exactly what's going on. Some other weird edge cases, if you might happen to run into them, that could be useful. So definitely a great resource to have there. And then as Mike had mentioned, he's got a pull request for the Govcon site, and that site itself and that pull request can kind of show you a representative example of what you're going to be looking at. So kind of give you a sense of, number one, what your situation will probably be similar to. It'll probably look kind of like this, but also number two, to kind of show you kind of all of the stuff that Lightning uninstall command is actually doing on your behalf, trying to make your life a little bit easier. So definitely good ones there. There's also a question about the slides being available. And I think that's fine. Is that okay with you, Mike?
Yeah, and I think they'll get posted with the recordings at some point. So yes, the slides will be available. They may not be posted for a little bit, but they will be available for sure. If there's a specific link or something you want, we can throw that in chat real quick before you all drop. So you've got that today. But yes, the slides, we'll post some version of the slides. So I think with that, just the last thing I want to say before we jump into questions, I really am thankful to the Lightning team, especially Adam Honig. Actually got a lot of traffic during the uninstall testing. Govcon actually was the guinea pig for a lot of the uninstall work that the Lightning team did. So it's really nice to be able to talk about this here and present this here because there was a lot of collaboration behind the scenes. If you're not familiar with the Govcon codebase, I talk about it all the time as a reference architecture because we do work very hard to keep it open and transparent and publicly available, just to sort of act and serve as a best practice. And as you saw here in this talk, we're able to literally point you at a site saying, here it is, here's where we removed Lightning, here's how you do it. And I'm incredibly proud that we're able to do that. So shout out to the Lightning team for collaborating with us, and hopefully that makes all of your lives much easier.
Awesome.
And with that, we intentionally left a bit of time here to make sure if there are folks in the room that are going through this now or getting ready to go through this, that we can help you out and answer questions. CC Lee, just quickly to go back to your question, the Lightning workflow module is what you want to re-add. Scheduled updates, Lightning uses the Lightning scheduler module. And I don't know what the scheduled updates module is, but if you uninstalled Lightning and if you didn't keep Lightning workflow, you're probably getting those errors or those warnings because Lightning scheduler is missing. So I don't think there's anything that would prevent you from installing Lightning workflow on a Drupal 9 site. I'm just confirming that now.
I don't think there's a problem.
No, it's compatible. As long as you're running Drupal 906 or above, it should work fine for you. So yeah, I would have a real good look at that because again, Lightning itself does not use a scheduled updates module. It just uses Lightning scheduler, which is bundled with Lightning workflow. So if you were using scheduled updates or some other module, that is the problem you're having is not tied to the Lightning uninstall process.
Right.
What other questions do we have from the group here today?
Any other questions? Especially since you've got Mike here. Looks like we do have a question here. Is there an extra step we need to take from moving from Lightning Media to Core Media?
Um, that's a really good question. Do you want to
Mm.
take that one, Ron, or do you want me to?
No, you go ahead.
So the um, Lightning Media adds some additional configuration and a little bit of additional functionality. It is not a binary either or sort of thing. Um, so Lightning Media will enhance core media. But at this point, I would say most of what, like 90% of what Lightning Media does is provide configuration for out of the box media entities, media bundles. So, there's a few other things that Lightning Media does, like it provides a bulk upload function
Mhm.
and a few other things like that. But 99% of what core media does is in core at this point. A lot of the like hotness in Lightning Media is not really Lightning Media, right? It's entity browser, it's Drupal core itself, media library now, I guess. So yeah, there's really the only thing I've been tracking right now is really that bulk upload stuff that's in Lightning Media. Hey Jess, how you doing?
I was writing my question a couple of times, and I just thought it might be easier for me to just say it out loud.
Yeah, that's fine.
And so we've been actively in the process of decoupling our site from the Lightning profile, and we were actually sort of going all in, right? In that understanding that most of what the Lightning media or the Lightning modules provided would be there through the contrib modules or through core, kind of slowly turning off those Lightning submodules and figuring out what's broken, what's missing.
Yeah.
And I always have to say, Lightning Media has been the one that I haven't been able to turn off yet. The other stuff has been pretty straightforward.
Yep.
But do you have either resources or references that maybe go into a little bit more detail about how the sub modules are structured or what they do? Or is it really just a matter of looking at the submodule code base and config?
I think it's probably going to be that. I also think that, for instance, a lot of the Lightning team's focus has been on uninstalling the profile more than the module. So if you're trying to
Mhm.
turn some of these things off and they're getting all tripped up over each other, like that may be a good thing to create some tickets for and start drawing attention to, because
Okay.
we know that that is coming. We know that that is going to be a thing that folks are going to be doing over the next couple of years. I'm not sure how much focus has been put on doing that yet.
I think part of our misunderstanding was Lightning reaching end of life. We were thinking of the whole thing, right? Not
Yeah.
just
Right.
the profile, and not fully understanding that the modules were going to be supported. Like, we knew it was D9 ready, but understanding that they were going to continue to stick around for a while.
Yeah.
We were missing that piece. So, sounds like we can still move forward with keeping some of the modules, but removing the profile, and be okay with that while the community works towards the actual modules themselves and either documenting or explaining how to remove yourself from those. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah. No, and I think, that's part of the reason Ron and I wanted to come and chat today, because I think that is a bit of a misconception that, Lightning end of life means everything's going away, and the profile, the modules are still good
Exactly.
for the next couple years.
Yeah.
So Eric asked, are subprofiles ever going to end up in core? Ron, I think you had addressed this a little bit on one of our previous slides. Do you want to answer that one?
Sure. Yeah. There was a lot of talk around that. There's a patch out there that has been used, and that's how you do the sub profile for Lightning. I haven't gotten updated on that in the last few months, but the last time I looked, it seems like that approach has been kind of that concept has been losing support. I can tell you that I think I may have noted another thing when we do the demo framework distribution that comes out of the demo team here at Acquia. What we've actually done there, because we need to support the use case like Mike was talking about, where you have one code base, but you might have multiple profiles so that you can spin up different versions of demos. what we've ended up doing there is moving away from the sub profiles and just making the profiles very thin. So putting most of the functionality, the config, and all of those things into individual modules. And then the sub profile is really just a high level way of just turning on specific ones in groups. That works really, really well in that use case. It makes it easy because we don't have to manage a whole bunch of profiles. So to answer your question, I don't know that it will. If that's something that you feel is important, then, make your voice heard, and it's all part of the community. I'm sure there's other people who might agree. I think the biggest thing that's been the drawback, to be quite honest, is some of the complexity around not only managing sub profiles, but managing things like configuration, updates, things like that. And as Mike mentioned earlier, once you set the profile for your Drupal site, on install, aside from some of the weird things we're doing here, it's not something you can easily just kind of swap out. So it's a different thing than we would expect from modules and themes.
Next question from Bernardo: is there another profile, contributed profile, that might take Lightning's place? Maybe Thunder. Thunder's one that I've heard a lot about over the years. I've never personally used it. Again, at Acquia, I think we're probably gravitating more towards Acquia CMS, just because, for many of our customers, that makes sense. So I don't know that I have a great answer for you, Ron. I don't know if you do.
I mean, I think personally, I'm a big fan of. It's almost. I mean, so there's two pieces. The first piece is the packaging. From that perspective, Composer. So knowing what modules you want out there and kind of having your own kind of favorite list will get you most of the way there. The other place where you are going to be looking at an actual distro or an install profile is if you're going to be doing something like Multisite, or you're going to be going through the process of spinning things up. And again, in that case, I would probably tend to look at doing a very simple custom profile that keeps things really, really easy for you to do. So if there's something else out there, like I know that there's another distribution that came out recently called Paragon. I haven't had a chance to look at yet. There's things like Thunder. There's going to be lots of these. So I don't know that there's necessarily a best one, but I definitely think that when you find something that works well for you and for your team, then that's going to be the one that's best for you. Awesome. Other thoughts, other questions? Appreciate you jumping in, Jess. Cool. Looks like we got an update that scheduled updates dev version is D9 ready. So that is definitely confirmed. That's good. I think that's it. How about you, Mike? Anything else you want to add?
No, I talked a lot about the Drupal 8 yesterday. So if you're still running Drupal 8, I would definitely prioritize that. I've blogged about that. The recordings from yesterday should be on YouTube soon. I would prioritize getting off of Drupal 8 and onto Drupal 9 ASAP. That is the much, 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 much more critical thing for you to do. But I would certainly not let this sit, right? Like the Lightning work is not that hard, I think. So assuming you're on Drupal 9 already, I would just get this done, get it out of the way.
Yeah. Fantastic. And Josh, thanks for that tweet. Super helpful.
Yeah, much appreciated.
Thank you very much.
All right. Well, hey, everybody, thanks for joining us. I hope you have a fantastic rest of the conference and good weekend, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
See you, Jess.